Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. And here's Rudy with his 80s style hair. So how do we get here? Because most of the process is a slow process, it's a very tedious process. It's not really that much complicated getting the shape. It's just tedious and long. So I had to break this scene into a whole bunch of smaller scenes and just show you what the process is. Eventually you'll get to something more or less like this. Of course, the more time you spend on it, the better the result. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open up the starting point. Okay, so here's Rudy, and I just made a NURBS plane, and let's wait for this to go ahead. There we go. So a NURBS plane. And a couple of things about NURBS plane. When you are in component mode, that's pressing F8. Um, if you look at this little icon here, you can click on a line, and that way you'll select, all the vertices on that direction. And if you use your arrow left and right, you can move left and right. Or if you click here, same principle, up and down. Okay, so that facilitates a lot of the work. Um, so once you have that, then you start doing little planes and deforming them and placing them. And I just showed you the starting point of this. Now again, keep in mind your starting position. It's always important to make sure that your start is where the hair starts. Okay, so you don't want to have the start here. You want to always have the start there. That's where the hair starts. That's the most important thing, because eventually, remember that lock at start and all that stuff, well, that can come into play here. Alrighty, so that's the starting point, and then moving a little bit, then we have lots of NURBS. So this part takes a long time, like I said, and I did it a little bit fast so that I wouldn't take so long for this tutorial. But again, if you're gonna do it yourself, you want to make sure you spend the time. What I have here is a lot of NURBS. So a lot of NURBS planes, just moving and deforming and pushing and pulling CVs and getting all that shape across. Alright, so just to give you an idea here, this is the hypergraph. That's how many I have. I have a total of like 80. So yeah, so it takes a little bit of time. But once you have a whole bunch, okay, and that's just same thing. What I was just doing is just selecting and moving, and then you duplicate it and you move it around, and you press that, and you come here and you deform, and so on and so forth. And you have a lot of layers. Just I guess a quick note, which is a good way to work, is you start down and you start moving your way up in layers. That's it's not such a bad way to start. I mean, you want to have a lot of overlapping, and little by little it starts growing, and you start changing the shape and the direction. Of your curves and all that stuff. So like I said, this is the part that's gonna take you the longest. If it takes you 8 hours, that's not bad. I was working on this for like 3 hours. Okay, alrighty, so once you have that stage of lots of NURBS done, and again, you want to make sure you get all your contact points and keep them as close as you can. The closer you get them, of course, the better. But you want to have a lot of overlapping. Okay, see how they're like just layers overlapping, overlapping, overlapping. That's really what's important here. So once you have all those NURBS, then you do a rebuild, and I'll show you how to do that in a second once this works. There we go. So the rebuild, I actually did a rebuild on the U. So as you know, surfaces have a U and V direction. And I'm actually just going to come back here to lots of nerves. So they have a U and a V direction. So once Maya moves, there we go. You go to surfaces and you select your NURBS surface, and you can do a selection so that you don't select any polys, you only select NURBS, and that's going to select only your NURBS planes. And you go to edit NURBS, rebuild surfaces, and I guess it's always a good idea just to start with one so you know which direction that you need to do it. So you do uniform, and instead of 0 to 1, 0 to 1, instead of U and V, you switch it to U or V. So I'm just going to keep this at 4 and 4, and by doing V, it'll only do the V direction. It's going to add 4 spans around V, and like so. If I was doing U, then it'll do it like that. So that's not what we want. We want curves coming down like that. So once you have that, then you actually go in and you select all of them and you hit apply. And now they all have those guys coming down. Okay, so you always want to check that everything is okay for you. And once you're done with that, then comes the next stage, which is making curves out of this. So how do you do that? You duplicate. I'm just going to duplicate this one just to make sure, again, that is done in the right direction. So you go to edit curves, duplicate surface curves option box, and it tells you if you want to do both V or U. So I'm going to start with V and hit apply, and V works fine. If I had done U, then it would only do the top and the bottom, and that's not what we want. So we want V, right? And now we have curves from that surface. So that's what we're about to do, but to all of them. So we select all of them and apply. And close. So now there's a whole bunch of curves that come from those polyplanes. I'm sorry, from those NURBS planes. So the next stage is deleting the NURBS. So you can simply toggle select curves so you don't select any curves accidentally, and toggle select off the surfaces, and then just right click and NURB surfaces, and that's going to select all your NURBS, and you just delete them, and voila, now we have a whole bunch of hair. Now you might see, you might have to do a little bit of cleanup, so I'm not going to do it right now, but you know, you have to clean all those up. And that takes care of that part. Now I'm gonna actually open up the scene that I do have where I cleaned that up already. So here we go. And the next stage, once you have all your curves, you can, you know, make extra adjustments if you need to or whatever. But once you have this, you just select all your curves, make sure that you have only curve selection, and go into the dynamics menu. And under hair, you can make selected curves dynamic. And make curves dynamic, and it's going to take a little bit. It's going to convert all those guys, and it's going to do the same thing that we talked about that it did before. There we go. So now we got a start and a dynamic curve. And which are the dynamic ones? The blue ones, the light blue ones. Like so. Not too shabby, right? Alrighty, so let's go ahead and open the hypergraph. And what we have here is our hair system, a follicle, and the original curves and the duplicated curves. Now it's probably a good idea to name these guys correctly so you know which ones are which. And if you look at the name, these are all duplicated curve. So actually, if you highlight the name and copy, and then here on the top, usually you see these three guys, or sometimes you see like that, just click on this little icon and go to rename. And actually first we're gonna select by name, and we're gonna select Control V or paste, and we're gonna do duplicated curve, get rid of the number, and just press star. And what that does is that it selects every object in Maya that has that name. In this case, all those guys. So now we can rename, and we just highlight that. We're gonna call this original curves. See? So nice and organized. And now we're simply going to, we can just do a drag selection here for all the dynamic curves. Just pressing Control Shift to add it to selection. And going to rename these guys dynamic curve. And we're gonna add that to a layer, and we're going to, instead of having to select those, we can just select by name and just select one of the original curves, Control C and Control V, original curve star. So now all those guys are selected, and add them to a layer. So that way it's easier for us to work, you know. We can display only the current curves. Alrighty, so that is most of the way done. The next step is to simply select the hair system, which is right here, and we're going to go hair, and we're going to I always forget what this is. Assign paint effects brush to hair, and that's going to assign default brush to the hair. Now, some changes that we can do here are, if you go to the hair system, you can go to clump and hair shape, and you can increase the subsegments so it's a little bit more round like that. And if you take this display quality, that's just for display purposes, so that if it gets too heavy you can take this down so you can work. You'll see what I mean. Right now our clumps don't have any width, so if we had, let's say, 10 hairs per clump, then we don't see anything. But if we increase the width of the clump, then we start seeing those guys. So I'm going to make it small, 0.05, so you can see what I'm talking about. There we go. See, so right now for each clump of hair there's those guys. But of course, if we increased that thickness, then we're starting to get a little bit more. We can even get a little bit more, 0.1. So it's nice and afro-ish looking. Hey, alrighty. So with that, then we have a couple of extra things we can change. Here's the width of the hair. So if it's too thick for you, you can take that down. And that's the width of each individual hair. I'm going to take the hairs per clump back to 1, and just, I'm going to use Maya software so it renders quicker, although this renders with mental ray. So you can see that they're pretty thick. So if we take that hair width to 0.001, and they're going to be thinner, and you know, you just keep adjusting. 0.0005, 0.0001. So now they're really thin, and that allows me to have now, let's say, 50 hairs per clump. and that's when it starts getting heavy. See, now if you click select here, you get to see how that looks like. So now there's a lot of hairs, a lot of really thin hairs, and that takes care of that part. Now the because it's gonna be really hard for me to work. See how slow this is? That's when that display quality comes into play. See, that allows you to work a little bit faster. It gives you a preview of what's going on. We have this clump width scale, so you can make the tips have the same thickness as the base or have less thickness. This is a scale value for the hair itself. If you want to curl your clumps, you can do that too through here, but we're not going to do that. You can change the flatness, and this, guys, always this is the base and this is the end. So if I wanted the base to not be flat but the tips to be flat, then I would do something like that. What that does is that you can see that they get flat here in the tips, and if I take that down, they start getting round. Okay, and there's also this interpolation that allows you to adjust sometimes a little bit of the look of the hair. So like if it's coming out too much, I can push that value. And there's also a thinning value, so you can thin it out. I'm going to take this display quality back up. The more subsegments you have, the smoother it's going to look, at the expense of longer render times. So that takes care of that. Then you have this shading, and that's where you can change the color of your hair. And I'm just waiting for Maya to think. There we go. I'm going to take my display quality back down. There we go. So you can change the color of your hair to whatever color you want. And then you have this scale, remember, base and tip. So you can scale it out, and that would make the base darker. Or I can even say make the tip a little bit bluer. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep it like that. Then you also have, let me just delete this guy here. Alrighty, then we have this opacity, which is the opacity of the hair, translucence of the hair, specular color of the hair, and you have a specular power. It's the same principle as fur. And you also have color cast shadows, of course, so if you want it on or off. Color randomization, so you can actually randomize the diffuse, or you can randomize the hue. The diffuse in this case just means how bright or how dark it is. You can change the hue, so you can totally randomize the hue and the saturation values, and even the value of that, so you can end up having something more interesting looking. And that's pretty much the main properties. There's also this multi-streaks, which is pretty handy. What it's gonna do is, like, if I do one, it's just gonna add one more hair rendering wise per hair. So you know, you can do something like that, like really high, and then you're just gonna get a lot of hair without having to take this hairs per clump so high. So I can do like 10 and keep this at 100. So it looks like there's not that many, but when it comes to rendering, I don't know if this is going to take too long to render, but we'll give it a shot. That's not so bad. So actually a little bit more than what there is here. You can light each hair, and you can change the spread of the multi-streaks. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more. Let's go to 50. take this display quality down. See, there's still not that many. However, it is important that the same principle that we talked about with the polygon fur, or the poly texturing over the fur, that you want to make sure the base texture of your head actually has a similar color to the base texture, or a dark color, so that you don't see the connections. And once you don't see the connections, then you're gonna get a lot of the look going on that looks proper. You can also add displacements. You can curl it, and that's just via displacements. Um, and that's basically it. You have render stats, so you can change the receive shadows for mental ray, and again the settings for mental ray, so that it's visible transparency, cast, final gather, whatever. I'm gonna try it. One thing that you want to do with mental ray is go to your render settings, and under quality, instead of production, let's just wait for this to open up. Instead of production, you have production rapid hair, and guess what that does? It allows you to render hair a little bit faster than if you didn't have it there. So I'm just gonna go File, Save Scene As, and just call that like that. Yeah, it went over right. Just go ahead and add a light. Okay, I'm gonna get a little fancy here. I'm just gonna come to indirect lighting, physical sun and sky. And let's see if this is gonna take too long to render or not. Okay, so it's gonna take a little bit, so I'm gonna pause and come back once it's done. Okay, here we go. So here's the render. I did a couple of adjustments, plus Maya crashed on me. Figures. But yeah, so here's more or less the result of that. So as you can see, it's not too shabby, considering that, you know, it's just a test. So I'm sure that once you start spending some time, it'll look really nice. So till next time, bye bye.